I am not done yet with what I was saying at the end of the last video. You truly should touch grass.
Touching grass won't teach the masses 40k lore, Pio. I have a duty.
You have an hyperfixation bordering on a mental illness. You are the biggest nerd I've ever encountered.
Yeah, you tell him, Pio.
Who are you?
Yeah, I'm on my lolly. I make content too. I'm a YouTuber.
And what do you do?
Yeah, mainly video essays on various sources. I'm kind of mostly renowned for my coverage of the legendary manga series Berserk by Kentaro Miura. It's pretty good.
And how long is the entire coverage of it?
Over 21 hours long by this point.
I would like to apologize for my prior statement.
Apologies accepted, but because I felt insulted, you're watching the video in its entirety all the same. The meaning of victory is not to defeat your enemy, but to destroy him. To eradicate him from living memory, to leave no remnants of his endeavors, to crush utterly his every achievement, and remove from all record his every trace of existence. From that defeat, no enemy can recover. That is the meaning of victory. So, Pio, hope you are eager to learn today, because after talking of the Badab War, which was the second biggest civil war of the Imperium of Men after the Horus Heresy, today we go to its counterpart.
Counterpart?
Yes, today we will discuss the second biggest Imperial Crusade, second only to the Great Crusade of the Emperor of Mankind. We will discuss the Macarian Crusade, led by Lord Commander Solar Macarius.
Please, tell me this is not going to become another Badab War series.
Gladly for my sanity, free time and your ears, no, this is not going to be a series. We will do it in this single video.
Thank the Emperor. Please tell me the Lamenters are not involved here either.
No, gladly it seems they aren't.
My boys are safe for another video. Life is good.
As usual, before we start the incredible deep dive into the story the video is about, I want to thank the members of our Patreon for the invaluable support that helped us creating this video. Trust me, the amount of research was nothing to scold about. And I want also to thank the members of our Discord for their invaluable insight on some of the events we will talk about. So, if you want to support us or even talk to us on Discord, all links are in the description. Now, before we start for real, there is a little warning I must give to everyone watching. This lore is extremely intricate. And when I say intricate, I mean that it is so old, as it dates back to 2nd edition, that there is at least half a dozen codexes contradicting each other in various ways for the same story in dates, events, and pretty much everything else. I spent days researching and reading, to the point that I read an entire trilogy of books of 40k in 4 days just for this video. Almost 1000 pages of them in total, not counting codexes and such. So, I will retell the story in the most canonical way possible I have found. But Games Workshop really should fix this mess if they ever get to touch the events of the Macarian Crusade again.
A trilogy of books in 4 days. This man needs help.
Says the literal basement dweller that lives in my basement.
May I remind you that you keep me prisoner there, only because you want me to listen to you retelling 40k lore?
That is completely irrelevant. We will recount the events in chronological order, just to make things easier to follow in general. And to do that, we have to start by explaining the Great Schism. The Great Schism was a period following the end of the Age of Apostasy brought in by Gog Van Dyer when he took power both in the throne of the High Lords for the Ecclesiarchy and the Administratum. To put it simply, it was a loss of faith in the Emperor of Mankind's vision of a united humanity. This had caused many sectors of the galaxy to spiral out of control. Their planets and systems seceding from the Imperium of Men under control of human warlords, or conquered by alien forces and living under their heel, if they were not exterminated outright. And some of them also fall into chaos, either by invasion or by corruption. It is because of this schism inside the territory of humanity that a new age of crusading and conquering will become the focus of the Imperium of Men, going from M37 to M41. This age will become known as the Age of Redemption. Many victories were won by Imperial heroes to try and undo the damage that the Age of Apostasy had caused to the Imperium of Men. And it is in this age, in early 41st millennium, that the man that would become known as Saint Macarius was born. Born a noble and heir to the throne of planetary governor on the planet of Donia, the skills of Macarius were visible from when he was very young.
Into such times was Macarius, later Lord Solar, and finally Saint Macarius born. The greatest general the Astra Militarum has ever known, Macarius was a man possessed of fierce passions, unyielding piety, and one of the finest tactical minds that humanity has ever produced. Born heir to the rulership of Donia, he was already a general in the Astra Militarum by his early 20s. While this appointment might have been due to his rank, he quickly proved more than worthy of it. He brought the Roxane rebellion to a swift and decisive end, earning him the attention of the High Lords of Terra and seeing him named as heir to the Lord Commander Solar Philips, whom his forces had rescued.
Just to give it some context, the title of Lord Solar is basically the highest rank you can get in the Imperial Guard. It means you are in charge of all guard forces across an entire segmentum. Each segmentum can have its own top commander, Lord Solar, Lord Gothic, Lord Ultima, and so on. And they are responsible for leading the guard in their own sector of space. Macarius became quickly renowned as a brilliant general and extremely skilled fighter. His charisma and oratory were also off the charts, managing to convince his superiors that his daring and often dangerous plans were worth putting into action to end the rebellions of planets and star systems. They always succeeded. So, when Lord Solar Philips was killed in action, Macarius ascended to his title and rank with no objections, as everyone was convinced that there was nobody more worthy of such title. The newly appointed Lord Solar Macarius proceeded to marshal entire armies across the segmentum, then systematically compelled the great rebellious warlords of the era to capitulate in a series of brilliant campaigns still studied by Imperial tacticians as some of the most efficient ever waged.
Have you gotten that this guy is pretty much Alexander the Great but in 40k? No? Well, now you know.
The warlords that refused to submit to his authority he typically crushed utterly, though a few that showed great ability were recruited into the service of Macarius to redeem themselves through service. In doing so, Macarius soon found himself surrounded by a cadre of talented generals and commanders, people he would desperately need for what was coming. For Lord Commander Solar Macarius, restoring the borders of the Imperium was righteous and good, but not enough. When Macarius was satisfied with the elimination of the scheme from the entirety of Segmentum Solar, he was granted an audience by the Senatorum Imperialis directly in front of the High Lords. And there he would propose a grand new endeavor, an imperial conquest into the Segmentum Pacificus on a scale not seen since the days of the Great Crusade itself. The High Lords of Terra agreed to his proposal, and unanimously voted him Supreme Commander of all Astra Militarum forces within the Imperium of Men. With these forces at his back, Macarius turned his gaze outwards. Macarius held that his true task was nothing less than to reforge the spirit of the Imperium itself in fire, blood, and steel. His campaign was colossal in scope, the largest single military effort the Imperium had undertaken since the Emperor's Great Crusade. The Lord Solar chose Segmentum Pacificus because he knew that an high amount of territory within it had been lost to the Imperium millennia before, and was never reclaimed because of the Great Schism. But he was not aiming only at reconquering former territory. His gaze reached the limits of the galaxy, and even beyond. The Macarian Crusade will be declared in 392 and 41, after Macarius raised 7 great armies and amassed them on the edge of Segmentum Pacificus. And from here, we deviate from the original Codex timeline to talk about his first war, detailed in the first book of the Macarian Crusade trilogy, Angel of Fire. The first world to be in the aim of the newly declared Macarian Crusade was Karsk Fort. Hive Irongrad was the first target of the Crusade. Its production facilities were vital to keep the tanks supplied with ammunitions and explosives.
Soldiers of the Emperor, we stand on the brink of a mighty war. Soon, you will face the first battle of many against those who would defy the Emperor's will and keep these human worlds buried in the fetid darkness of heresy and unbelief. For their own selfish reasons, they seek to withhold from their fellow man the blessings of the Emperor's word and the goodness of his holy rule. We are here to save our fellows from this wickedness and restore order and light to these long-abandoned worlds. Today, we take the first step towards our greater goal. It is an important step. If we falter here, we will fail. If we do not harden our resolve, forswear false mercy, and carry ourselves with the firmness of purpose this great task deserves, we will condemn billions of our fellow humans to lives of squalid darkness and eternities of torment in the toils of the demons who feast on the souls of the damned. Do not let your finger rest on the trigger of your weapon. Sparing our enemies merely extends their lives for a pitiful eye blink in the Emperor's sight. and condemns their souls for all eternity. Show mercy to the heretic, and you do the work of demons yourself. The way forwards is harsh. It carries us through lava seas and across great chasms where the jaws of the earth could swallow a titan whole. It passes through sandstorms so powerful they can strip a man to the bloody bone in seconds. It takes us through clouds of poison so deadly that one breath is fatal. This is all to the good. I am serious. It is all to the good. While we are doing this, the second part of our force will be assaulting Hive Irongrad from the south, along the easy route, the way they expect us to come. They will not expect a massive armored assault from the northwest, and we shall hit them where we know the defenses are weakest. We will have the pyrite refineries and the weapon factorums. We shall bring millions of lost souls into the Emperor's light.
Though the assault was bloody, it succeeded. With Imperial Guard forces and tanks supported by the tactics and the superhuman strength of the Space Marines, the Hive soon fell under the control of Macarius. But very few could have predicted the events that would unfold in the Hive. Now, breaking the narration for a second, keep in mind that this trilogy is not from the point of view of Macarius. It is written from the point of view of Leo Lemuel, a Baneblade pilot at the time of the events of Angel of Fire. His Baneblade will be destroyed while conquering the Hive City, and while Macarius and his armies departed to another war zone in the neighboring Hive cities and the planets of the system, Leo will be left to guard the city and to keep order in it. While he was there, very strange things were happening. The Hive City followed a deity called the Angel of Fire, said to be the right hand of the Emperor of Mankind. It was not heresy per se, but it was extremely close. Cages with restraints inside were found all around the Hive once it was conquered. Inside them, charred bodies with rebreathers, to keep them alive in agony as they burned. Preachers of this religion could be seen around, always in the corner of the eye, often out of sight. But, at some point, the preachers revealed themselves as psychers. They started attacking the forces left to keep Hive Irongrad compliant. They became literal angels of fire. Creatures made of flame with flaming wings on their backs. They just needed to touch a man to make him burst into flames and die an agonizing fiery death. The attacks grew ever more frequent, to the point that Space Marines had to be deployed to quell some of them, before they had to retreat to redeploy on more important battlefields. Soon, unexpectedly, Macarius would return. He was wounded in battle while fighting to conquer other eyes. Hive Irongrad had the best hospital on the entire planet, and Macarius, wounded in battle while he was fighting side by side with his own men on the front lines, was rushed there for treatment. Keep in mind that Macarius by this point was already an old man. His body was kept healthy and young by rejuvenant treatments, a very rare commodity in the Imperium, and only for the most influential people. By this time Leo, that had been previously decorated by Macarius for his bravery, as his now destroyed Baneblade was the first tank to enter Hive Irongrad, was on guard duty around the Hive. In his off time he had gotten into a one-night stand with a woman, a nurse at the same hospital Macarius was being treated at. Her name was Anna. Don't worry, I'm not mentioning this at random, it will be important in a bit. Leo will visit the Fortress Hospital where Macarius was kept, and like him, thousands of other soldiers would. Even if they were not allowed entering by the bodyguards of Macarius, that changed one day when Leo and the rest of the survivors of his own Baneblade, including his friends Ivan and Anton, were assigned to keep guard on the general directly inside the hospital itself, being men previously decorated by Macarius and kept in good graces by him. They were men he would trust with his life. While Leo and his squad were stationed there, the attacks of the preachers continued around the Hive. Soldiers were stationed in front of the hospital even with tanks to keep guard on the Lord High Commander. Until one fateful night. Outside, a mass of people, the priest of the Angel of Fire between them, probably pushing the people to rebel against the invaders of Irongrad, arrived to the hospital en masse. The guards stationed outside stood their ground, and then opened fire. All hell broke loose outside as the citizens of Irongrad and the priest of the Angel of Fire fought against the guards all around the Hive. Leo and his comrades woke up and moved to reach Macarius to bring him out. They found an attack was happening on the inside too. Assassins dressed as doctors had infiltrated the hospital and assassinated various guards of Macarius, and were now aiming to reach the floor and the chambers of Lord Solar Macarius himself. Leo and his squad fought their way up the hospital, finding bodies around of people they had not killed, but were visibly assassins that had come for Macarius. More and more corpses were spread around, both of the personal bodyguards of Macarius and the attackers. They managed, after killing several intruders, to reach the rooms of Macarius. Riker, the current commander of Leo's squad, called for Macarius from outside the door. Macarius surprisingly recognized him and called him by name, as he ordered for him and whoever else with him to enter with their hands raised. They found Macarius behind his bed, his bodyguards dead to the last man around him, all fallen to protect him. His torso bandaged and his skin pale, but he seemed as alive as ever, smiling in the middle of a battlefield like a madman. Riker told him that the hospital was under attack and they needed to get out. It was then that Macarius took command, and the doors on the opposite side of the corridors swung open. Out from them came Anna, her nurse uniform stained with blood as she held some kind of silenced bolt weapon in her hands. Her gun aimed directly at Leonie's squad, but she didn't fire. Macarius revealed she was part of the retinue of the Inquisitor that Macarius was accompanied by. A little spoiler, she's confirmed to be an assassin, most probably Kallidus Temple.
So you are telling me that Leo, a Baneblade driver, managed to bring into bed with himself a Kallidus shapeshifter assassin that was at the time disguised as a dark-skinned, short-haired tomboy nurse?
Correct.
Viewers, I declare Leo Lemuel the Warhammer 40,000. He has won. He is my new emperor. I will kneel in front of his majesty, but regrettably I don't have knees.
Leo, his squad, Macarius and Anna will manage to flee the hospital, killing as they went. Macarius was radiant, as he always was in the middle of battles. They managed to disguise themselves as doctors, and fled through the battling Hive City all the way to the Underhive, where they went into hiding, as Macarius, exhausted by his wounds and the battle, needed to rest. There, they will meet a very dangerous and important figure that will be omnipresent in the events going forward. They were reached by one of the advisors of Macarius, a psyker that attracted them all the way through the Hive by following the familiar soul of Macarius. It is there that they would encounter Inquisitor Drake.
This is a bad joke even by my standards.
You don't have standards, Pio. You made so many bad jokes in the Bad War videos that you were putting at the Monculaba.
That was an unpleasant experience.
On a serious note, High Inquisitor Hieronymus Drake is a very important figure in the story of the Macarian Crusade and Lord Solar Macarius. And yet, he doesn't have a Lexicanum page at all describing his story. And is not mentioned in the list of all known Inquisitors of the Imperium of Men. Inquisitor Drake will decide to aid the group. He was feeling that the cult of the Angel of Fire, venerated in the entire system of Karsks, was in fact a front for an ancient enemy of humanity. It was a chaos cult that kept control on the system with the religion of the Angel of Fire. Defacing the religion of the Emperor in favor of something a lot darker and a lot more dangerous. Inquisitor Drake will detect a spike of psychic energies in the Hive. All the deaths and slaughters of the cult and the civilians against the guard was alimenting a rite that was taking place in the cathedral on the high level. Drake could sense that something was being invoked, a force that not even the entirety of Macarius' armies would be able to stop if it manifested. The group will make their way up the Hive once again once Macarius was in better shape and rested. Disguising themselves as pilgrims, they made their way through the Hive, now again in control of the cult of the Angel of Fire. There they will see their fellow comrades and guardsmen burned in cages en masse in the name of the cult's deity. And as Drake knew that the ritual was almost completed, they needed to stop it in any way possible. Macarius formulated a plan. The group managed to infiltrate the private rooms of the temple, where they found the cages where their comrades were imprisoned, waiting only to be burned. And they were surveilled by some guards of the cult. The group attacked them, killing them, and in the battle that erupted, freed the prisoners. Macarius ordered to them to take the weapons of the guards, or whatever they could find, and fight for their lives to escape the temple. But Macarius only needed them to keep using the guards of the temple, as they made their way up to the rooms where Drake could sense that the ritual was taking place. Assaulting them, they found hundreds of the priests of the cult locked in a rite with their high priest, a powerful psyker by opinion of Drake, as he was channeling the warp energy needed for the ritual. At the top of the cathedral, a battle erupted. Macarius went straight for the High Priest, while the rest of the group, aided by the powers of Drake, were fighting off guards and the priest that had awakened from the interrupted ritual. Macarius will manage to wound the High Priest and take away the strange amulet he had on his neck, but the priest would escape in the corridors of the cathedral and disappear from sight. Both Macarius and Drake knew that there was no possibility to end him now, and as the battle became more fierce in the room, Macarius embedded a grenade in the giant statue of the Angel of Fire in the room, as it was connected to a gas pipe that was emitting flames on the back of the statue, forming real wings of fire behind it. After the grenade exploded, all around them the rest of the gas pipes started following suit, throwing the entire temple into a chaos of flames and explosions. At this point, Macarius and the group could only withdraw and try to escape. Macarius' new plan was daring, as they usually were. The group fled the temple in the confusion, found a vehicle, and started rushing towards the closest airfield. They needed to escape the Hive City and rejoin with the army away in the Wastes. They needed to reach General Sejanus and his battle group. After a lot of events and battles, really read the books if you want to know everything that happened, they managed to escape in a gunship and reach Battle Group Sejanus, that was already moving towards Irongrad to reconquer it. Sejanus was ecstatic to see Macarius. He was the most loyal general of Macarius, and one of his greatest friends. As the two discussed tactics, Drake could feel that the ritual had resumed. They had a day at most to stop it, or something that would annihilate everyone would be summoned into reality. The city now was pulsating with psychic energy. All around it, the earth shook. New roads filled with magma and multitudes of lava opened on the ground around it. The approach was impossible, until Macarius noticed an opening. The rearranging of the ground around Irongrad and the magma emerging from it were forming a symbol. The symbol he had taken from the neck of the High Priest of the Heretics. It was the symbol of Tzeentch. Plans were formulated and put into motion. An entire army charged against Irongrad once again. Hundreds of tanks, thousands of Chimera transports. The skies were filled with gunships and aircrafts. The battle was fierce and violent. Demons were now forming and fighting outside the Hive City. And once the army broke inside of it, more of them emerged, in the streets, fighting side by side with the cultists and the population of Irongrad against Macarius. They were not trying to stop him, just buy time. It goes so bad that the statues of the Angel of Fire all around the city started animating and moving, flying overhead and spewing ethereal fire on the attackers. In the end, the army managed to reach the cathedral. Hundreds of soldiers poured inside and started fighting on corridors and stairwells. Macarius was always at the forefront, smiling in the midst of battle as a madman as he cut down dozens of enemies while advancing. Macarius would build a reputation during the Crusade for his unusual behavior of fighting on the battlefields at the side of his own men. Extremely unusual for an Imperial general. Finally, Macarius, Leo and his squad, together with Drake and his own retinue of stormtroopers bodyguards, more psychers he had summoned from his agents, and even Anna broke inside the high chambers of the cathedral. The High Priest was completing the ritual. A wound in reality was opening on the ceiling of the room. Strange creatures could be seen. The psychic pressure was massive. And a god seemed to be coming through the portal. The demon was already whispering and trying to corrupt the soldiers in the room. Even Leo himself had visions of what it promised if he had sworn loyalty to it. As Leo snapped out of it, he saw that Macarius was in the same state, staring at the demon as the demon stared at him. Who knows what he was offering to try and corrupt Macarius, but whatever it was, it didn't work. Macarius screamed that he refused the demon. The heretics were summoning a Lord of Change into reality. Leo aimed his shotgun directly at the head of the High Priest and exploded it with a single bullet. The ritual was halted, but the Lord of Change took possession of the body of the High Priest, summoning a sword of fire as the battle once again erupted in the room. Macarius charged the possessed corpse and started dueling with him in melee combat. Drake and his psychers started their incantations. A part of them projected a shield around Macarius, protecting him as he fought the incarnation of a powerful demon, while the rest strained to close the portal to the warp that still persisted in the room. The battle became chaotic and bloody immediately, as dozens of soldiers poured in to fight against the cultists as Macarius dueled, keeping the demon busy as Drake worked to banish it. In the end, the portal was closed. All the psychers of High Inquisitor Drake had died. He looked decades older from the strain of what he had done in the last few minutes. The demon tried to fight, but in the end was banished back into the warp. All that was left of his influence was a shimmering in the air that slowly disappeared, as the soldiers started slowly to call the name of Lord Commander Macarius in high voice, until all the soldiers inside the cathedral were chanting it at full force. The battle for Irongrad was over. The Macarian Crusade had officially begun.
The most powerful man in the Crusade is Leo Lemuel. He is the Warhammer 40,000.
How he doesn't have a broken pelvis after a night with an assassin I will never understand.
But I must say, the fact that Macarius not only is leading his men from the front, but that he fights side by side with them is worthy of respect. What happened to Lemuel and his group after it?
They were made personal bodyguards of Macarius, and joined his personal regiment, the Lion Guard. Macarius cared a lot about his own men, and he will show it time and time again in the trilogy. But I will say it's time to move forward with the story. The Macarian Crusade will move all of his might inside Segmentum Pacificus. Dozens of battlefields soon became hundreds, and slowly hundreds of worlds were reconquered in the name of the Imperium. Lord Solar Macarius was always at the forefront, his brilliant mind capable of coordinating forces and generals on hundreds of battlefields simultaneously with very little effort. As the scope of the Crusade expanded and the battlefronts enlarged, multiple Space Marine chapters joined it. Now, for those who don't know it, this is a rare event. Space Marines are independent forces. They don't take orders from other Imperial forces, and certainly don't join a war they have no interest in joining. But the Crusade had become so massive by this point that various Space Marine chapters couldn't resist participating. Even one of the first founding chapters, the Space Wolves, led by Ulrich Grimfang at the time, will join the Crusade. But in their case, they were coordinating directly with Macarius' forces.
Did he offer them trees for it?
Don't let Space Wolves fans hear you. They will attack you directly with their fursonas. The events of how and why the Space Wolves joined Macarius are explained in the second book of the Macarian Crusade, Feast of Demetrius. Now, this book, if you ask me, is still very interesting, but it has the least level of advancement in the story of Macarius himself, so our explanations of it will be faster. As the campaign continued, Leo and his group still followed Macarius in his conquest as his own personal bodyguards. Macarius and Drake had found the location of an artifact named the Feast of Demetrius, a relic they suspected was the lost power claw of Primarch Liman Ras. After assaulting and conquering the planet where the feast was kept, also little note, Leo almost died in the final charge as Macarius led it himself into the temple, being the bodyguard of Macarius was the same level of dangerous as being a normal guardsman, the man always led from the front, they managed to acquire the feast, and as they retreated to reach Emperor's Glory, the capital planet of the Crusade at the moment, in the middle of a warp jump, a warp storm hit the fleet of Macarius. His ship was pushed off course, and it arrived in a system at the moment under siege by Dark Eldar raiders. Therefore their own machinations. Once again, if you want to know more, read the book. The fleet of the Dark Eldars reached the flagship of Macarius, and during the space battle, boarded it. Macarius put on a masterful defense, coordinating his soldiers in the corridors of the ship against the ever-fast and supremely strong Dark Eldars, fighting against them in front of his soldiers at the same time as he coordinated the defense of the ship. In the end, he killed several of them, and was successful with his men in pushing back the assault and forced the Dark Eldars to retreat. But as they did so, their commander stole the Feast of Demetrius. Nobody noticed it until the ship made an emergency warp jump into the warp to escape the fleet of Dark Eldars. Back on Emperor's Glory, Macarius went on with his politics and his coordinating of the Crusade. But the feast was very important, as he wanted to use it to forge an alliance with the Space Wolves, that at one point arrived on the world. Ulrich Grimfang himself arrived to greet the general and discuss with him about the feast, and negotiating an alliance based around his recovery. Also, Anna is still around. Leo is still having relationships with her. In fact, when he got on the planet after the emergency warp jump, he found her naked in his bed.
It should have been me!
Even Leo knows she's a spy, Pio, and she's using him to learn more info on Macarius.
I still fail to see the downside.
Anyway, a deal was struck between Grimfang and Macarius. They had to recover the feast, and in exchange for it, the Space Wolves would aid Macarius directly during the Crusade, coordinating directly with him. Macarius started to move to go back to the system invaded by the Dark Eldars and recover it. Grimfang dispatched a great company of Space Wolves to aid him, under the command of the only living being in the galaxy still breathing that has seen Lord Solar Macarius alive with his own eyes.
And who is that?
Who could it be, if not the captain of the company dispatched to El Macarius? And we have talked about him in several occasions. The captain that fought side by side with Macarius was young Logan Grimnar. Macarius managed to return to the system even through the warp storm, and deployed his army on the planet the Dark Eldars used as a base to recover the feast. Aided by the Space Wolves of Logan Grimnar, and after a very long and very violent battle that went all the way into even the Eldar Webway, no, I'm not elaborating, read the books, they managed to foil the plans of the Dark Eldars and recover the Feast of Demetrius. But when Logan took it and examined it, he confirmed that it was not a weapon wielded by Ras. It had all been for nothing. But the alliance still existed. The Space Wolves will now serve as support directly to Macarius, giving him even more power. The Macarian Crusade kept expanding, annexing more and more worlds into its fold. Lord Solar Macarius had become the most powerful man in the Imperium of Men. He was a hero, a saint. His soldiers loved him. His generals respected him. He was the most successful general after the Emperor of Mankind. The Macarian Crusade was the most successful crusade ever undertaken from the time where the Emperor walked among men. Now, please, give all of your attention to what I'm going to narrate now. It is very important. You will understand why later. The Macarian Crusade pushed outwards for 7 long years, or so the official records of the Imperium state, marking that the Crusade lasted from 392 to 399 and 41. But these claims are debated for various reasons, but what is known is that Macarius' forces conquered many hundreds of worlds and multiple sectors, eventually reaching the Halo Zone, the stars farthest from the Astronomicon, and at the edge of the galaxy. His exhausted soldiers, tired from years of battle, began to talk of nightmares, of being stalked by phantoms of the mind. They whispered amongst themselves that the Halo was no place for living souls, and their officers were of like mind. Navigators could no longer clearly see the beacon light of the Astronomicon, and astropathic messages to the Imperium went unreturned. Whenever Lord Solar Macarius was warned of these dark signs, he spoke of the glorious victories yet to come for the Imperium and the Crusade, of worlds that had never seen the Emperor, ones that needed to be liberated from the terrors that plagued the edge of the galaxy. Scholars believe that it was his friend General Sejanus who faced Macarius' wrath and told him the simple truth. It was over. The Crusade was spent. The Ecclesiarchy teaches that Macarius wept tears of outrage in frustration that his troops had faltered when he never would. More pragmatic savants record that the Lord Solar retreated to his quarters and drank himself into a stupor. After 3 days of private contemplation, Macarius emerged and ordered all army groups to return to the Imperium, signaling the end of the Crusade. Lord Solar Macarius died on the return trip back into Imperial space in 441. The official story is that he finally succumbed to a tenacious fever he had contracted while fighting on the planet of Jucha. Many believed, and certainly the Adeptus Ministorum ultimately chose to preach, that Macarius passed because his mighty heart could not bear to be defeated. There was mystery about the real cause of death of Macarius. Some declared he died against traitors, others that a cultist or an assassin killed him, or that he was executed by the Inquisition. What is true is that the news of Lord Solar Macarius' death was heard across the entire Imperium. For his fame and the tales of his glorious crusade are spread even unto the farthest eastern reaches of the Ultima Segmentum. Emperor's Gift, or Emperor's Glory, there is conflicting sources about the name of the planet, but it is the capital planet of the crusade, was renamed to Macaria in his honor, and there his body was laid to rest in a massive tomb. Within months of his interment, Macarius was canonized by the Ecclesiarchy, officially becoming saint of the Imperial cult. Macaria became a shrine world soon thereafter. And do you want to know why I asked you to give special attention to this specific part of the retelling of the story? Because everything you heard from when I asked you to pay attention to this part to now is bullshit. No, I'm not joking. The entirety of the last part is false. Pay attention, I do not mean not canon. I have researched the entirety of the sources on both Macarius and the Macarian Crusade and beyond as you are watching this video. And what I narrated is explained in many of the sources you find here, even in the most recent one, which is the Imperium Maledictum Manual. For once, Lexicanum got everything right source-wise. Even the White Dwarf here is accurate, and contains info that say the same thing about the final part of the Crusade and the end of Macarius. But it isn't actually what happened. And the worst thing about it is that the true story is not even mentioned in the personal Lexicanum page of Lord Solar Macarius. His page says that the truth is that Macarius died fighting against his ex-protege Richter, who had turned to Nargol, and that he contracted several diseases on the world of Loki that gave him a few weeks of life, but was in turn killed by the Inquisition and Drake, who may have been sabotaging Macarius' war effort on Loki, but the Inquisitor himself was then killed by the assassin. But this isn't the full story, it isn't what happened. Now you really have to pay attention, because you are going to learn the true ending to the story of Macarius and the Macarian Crusade. I mentioned that I read the entire trilogy of books on Lord Solar Macarius. We covered only 2. Angel of Fire, which was the beginning of the Crusade in 392, Feast of Demetrius, which is set a decade later, so the 7 years of crusading already go out of the window, as the crusade is now in year 402. And little note, the second book will make you hate the Dark Elder with all of your might, even if you are a fan. But there is another book, the final one, Fall of Macarius, that takes place by word of Leo after he has been the bodyguard of Macarius for over 25 years. The Macarian Crusade ended at least in 417 or 418 and 41, and Macarius died in the same year. Now, I imagine that you may ask why I should consider the novels over what the codexes explain. Removing that I have always placed more weight on the novels than in the codexes, except if CS Goto is involved. I will not let go of Trial of the Mantis Warriors, ever. It was torture. But the most recent source, in fact, the Imperium Maledictum Manual, hints that what the final book of the trilogy says might be truly what happened. And the story was then spinned and changed to become a tool of propaganda for the Imperium of Men. But let's get into the story now. The book opens on the planet of Loki, an industrial planet polluted and poisoned by the wastes of Manufactorum that worked incessantly for thousands of years. The war is going badly. The Macarian Crusade is bogged down on half a dozen planets. Macarius is leading his men on Loki from 2 years against his traitor ex-prodigy, Richter. The man was considered the successor to Macarius, but in the Halo Stars he had fallen to madness, took control of Loki and seceded from the Imperium with it. Macarius was here to put an end to this and bring Richter to justice. Of the group that originally had saved Macarius in the hospital at Hive Irongrad, only Leo, Anton, Ivan and Riker were left alive. All others had perished over time in other battles and conflicts. As I mentioned, the war was going badly. Hundreds of thousands of men had already died in the mud and trenches of the world. But the momentum had stopped. They were being pushed back. Richter seemed to be able to contrast the tactical genius of Macarius. The army was also low on supplies and soldiers, to the point that even Leo and his squad were sent to fight in the trenches on the front line, instead of doing their usual duty as bodyguards. There were few tanks left, not a lot of ammo, not a lot of food, virtually no serious medicines at all. And the fighting had become brutal in the thousands of kilometers of trenches that lined the battlefields. Richter was using cloning vats to replenish his soldiers. Macarius had probably less than 100,000 soldiers. Richter had millions. The planet itself seemed to be turning against Macarius and his armies. Infections and diseases seemed to get worse by the day, and chemical and gas attacks were the norm from the side of the heretics. After various events and battles, the front was lost. The men were ordered to fall back. Macarius had to deploy and save even Leo and his squad from a giant offensive from the heretics against the last held bastion city of the planet, having to organize a swift counterattack just so they would not lose it. The situation was dire, and it had become even more dire from when the corpses had started coming back to life on the battlefields. Yes, if it isn't obvious, Richter has fallen to Nargol, and is using Nargol's gifts on his own soldiers and the soldiers of Macarius to try and win this war, to the point that zombies were walking the battlefields. Leo got a bad injury on his leg on the battlefield and he got infected. He was brought to the hospital of the city, but was on the verge of dying. He was having visions, seeing creatures of Nargol around. Narglings moving in his field of vision. He even had an experience talking with a man next to his bed that was voicing loudly all the doubts he himself had about Macarius and the Crusade. That Macarius had lost his fortunes, or worse, had lost his abilities that made him unstoppable. Only to find out the day after that the man he had spoken with was dead from 2 days before. His corpse covered in the bed next to his, and only that morning was to be taken away. The only reason he survived was that Anna arrived, disguised once again as a nurse, and injected him with a serum that would cure the disease that was killing him. He suspected she was an hallucination. She wasn't. Even after 25 years and with their sporadic relationship going, she was still looking out for him.
This woman is wife material.
After a while, as Leo was getting better, panic erupted in the streets of the city. The deads were walking. The gifts on Nargol were inside the city, and at the same time a giant attack was coming from enemy territory. Millions of men and hundreds of vehicles were marching to take the city. There was no stopping them. Leo will be reached and saved by Anton and Ivan, and they rushed towards the spaceport. They were to evacuate the planet immediately. All was lost. They barely managed to get away as the forces of Richter were flooding the spaceport. This was Lord Solar Macarius' first defeat, ever. He was until now undefeated on the battlefields. For better or for worse, he had always emerged victorious. Not this time. Richter had won. Macarius had lost. Then rumors arrived to Macarius. The High Lord of the Ecclesiarchy had in secret called a meeting of Macarius' generals on the world of Acheron Prime, just behind the front lines of the Crusade. Macarius knew exactly why, and Drake confirmed it. Macarius had led the Crusade for decades. He was the most powerful man in the Imperium of Men, but he demanded too much. Too much efficiency, fought too much against corruption. Macarius had suspected that somebody was sabotaging his supply lines. Yes, they were stretched, and the Halo Stars were dangerous territory. But he was getting nothing from the Imperium from 6 months. He knew exactly why the meeting was called. The High Lords wanted Macarius replaced, to put somebody they could use in his place. So, he decided to reach Acheron Prime himself, and try to stop that from happening. Now, I will skip a lot of stuff from this part of the book, because it is mainly politicking. Even if it is very interesting. Again, read this trilogy, it's good. But a few very important things would happen in this part of the book. First, we get a revelation from High Inquisitor Drake, about Macarius' health at this moment.
Speak.
He seems old, as if the Juvenant has ceased to work, as if he's wearing out.
The Juvenat has ceased working.
No.
It stops working for everybody eventually. Otherwise, we would all live to be as old as the Emperor. I have seen the medical reports. His body is suffering from an advanced metabolic deterioration. It does not really show yet, but the process is accelerating. It will affect him mentally eventually, if it has not already.
You are saying that he's dying? That all those altered years are going to catch up with him?
In a way that will likely be most unpleasant.
Why are you telling me?
Because you are as close to him as anyone. You will notice it sooner or later, if you have not already. Do you really think he would have lost on Loki if he had been the same man as he was on Karsk?
Is this why the Imperium wants him replaced?
The Imperium does not want him replaced. People want him replaced. People with a great deal of power within the Imperium. And the people who want him replaced so that they can have his power, prestige and position. Some of them want to be the next Macarius. Most of them simply want power. Macarius is just an obstacle in the way of their ambition.
He cannot be replaced. He's a great man, none greater.
You know that. I know that. There are people who choose to believe otherwise. Worse, there are people who will disgrace him if they could, for they do not like to live in a world containing those greater than themselves. They would pull him down to their level if they could. He has outwitted them for a long time, but he is slipping. Everyone does eventually.
Even you, Inquisitor?
That remains to be seen. But yes, one day perhaps, even me.
Once again I ask you, why are you telling me this?
Perhaps because I have to tell somebody, and you at least are trustworthy. Also, you are close to Macarius. If you notice anything, you will tell me.
You are very certain of that?
It is in Macarius' best interests, and it is in your best interests. These are dangerous times. For all of us.
You won't let them replace him, will you?
Replace him, no. You were correct earlier. He is irreplaceable.
It would also become evident on the planet that there was no way for Macarius to avoid being replaced. The High Lord of the Ecclesiarchy demanded that he came to Terra to be honored, and a great parade held in his honor. But it was just a political game. Macarius knew that if he went to Terra, he will never come back to the Crusade. Somebody else will be put to lead it. It is also here that Greenfang will tell Macarius that the strength of the Space Wolves was needed somewhere else, and they will soon depart the Crusade to fight an orc invasion that was plaguing the Imperium of Men. This was another blow to Macarius' power. First he suffered his first defeat, now the Space Wolves were leaving him. Even if by the end of the meeting, Grimnar told Macarius that he still owed him a debt of honor, and Grimnar would repay him, one way or another. Also, a plot to kill Macarius by one of his own generals would be discovered and stopped. General Borgen Crassus of the 5th Army Group of the Crusade had tried to sway Leo to help a group of assassins get in Macarius' chambers and end the Lord Solar. Leo had played his role perfectly, and a trap was sprung. Those that were not killed were incapacitated. Crassus fled the world to avoid Macarius' vengeance. The day after, Macarius addressed the troops as he did usually. His charisma had always left men screaming for battle and conquest. But now the men were old, tired, the veterans were few. Many of the original soldiers of the Crusade were by this point dead. The soldiers wanted peace, but Macarius spoke again of great conquest and great victories. By the end of the speech, the crowd was silent and simply stared at him. At this point, Macarius had understood it was over. All the while, he was still obsessing over Richter and the planet of Loki. At the next meeting with his generals not long after, Macarius agreed to go back to Terra with the High Lord of the Ecclesiarchy, but he had just one condition. He wanted to go back to Loki and finish Richter first. He didn't need any help, nor men from other battle groups. His own men and soldiers were enough. The High Lord agreed to give Macarius his last battle before they retreated to Terra. On the way to Loki, everyone was obviously nervous. Leo, Anton, Ivan, even Drake himself. Macarius was sleeping at least mentally, and he had already lost on Loki. But he had a plan this time. Something that could not be stopped or countered by Richter. He wanted to weaponize one of the moons against the planet. He had the tech adepts of the Adeptus Mechanicus attach ancient and arcane engines to the moon that orbited the planet in the faster orbit. Also that he could use it as a weapon against Richter. He then addressed his own men.
It will work. I have every faith in the Adeptus Mechanicus. Their scholars have performed every calculation 1,000 times. All of the engines are placed correctly. There will be no mistake. There is no need for all the long faces, gentlemen. I want you all to be prepared to descend upon the surface of Loki at a moment's notice and to destroy the heretics there with complete and utter ruthlessness. Now is not the time to have any doubts. Now is not the time to show mercy. Now is the time to seize victory for the Imperium with our own hands and to show the watching worlds that the Crusade is still a force to be reckoned with.
The hour arrived. The engines turned on. The moon started to be pushed out of its orbit and towards the center of the battlefields near the Citadel, where Richter had taken control. The moon impacted against the world with celestial violence. It sent shockwaves all around the planet, pulverizing mountains and raising tectonic plates. The labyrinth of trenches and barbed wire that surrounded the Citadel of Richter was annihilated in minutes, and so was every defender caught in the calamity Macarius had unleashed. Only the Citadel of Richter still stood, heavily damaged and cracked, but the high fortress he was hiding in still stood. Nothing else on the planet but the city and the arch-traitor. At that point, the shuttles roared to the ground, tens of thousands of men deployed on the battlefields with hundreds of tanks. The final battle on the planet of Loki had begun. The Citadel still stood, and inside of it thousands of soldiers still lived. As the tanks and transports approached from the demolished mountain ranges, they were met with turret fire and bombardments from defense weapons. Baneblades and Liman Rasses fired against weapon emplacements or were hit and exploded as they advanced towards the city. At one point even the Baneblade of Leo and Macarius would be hit, and they would be left stranded in a dead point under the walls. This pushed them and other infantry that survived from destroyed tanks to sneak into the city, barely 100 men against thousands. By using stealth and the tactical genius of Macarius, they were able of going around the weapon emplacements, attack them in complete silence, and take control of basilisk emplacements. The soldiers of Richter, in the chaos of battle, didn't notice they were being bombed by their own weapons until it was too late. A battle erupted now even inside the city, the enemy having recognized that Macarius and his soldiers were inside the walls. The situation seemed desperate, and to be honest, it was. That was until dozens of drop pods of the space walls started raining down in the chaos, the great company of Grimnar and Grimnar himself emerging from them. Charging headfirst into the battle as Thunderhawk gunships passed overheads and destroyed tanks and gun emplacements of the enemy, or cut down dozens in a hail of bolter fire in seconds. The battle had now turned, and in a few hours, the battlefield would fall silent. The outside of the city was conquered, but now they needed to get inside, to get to Richter. After a few hours of rest Macarius granted his own men, the Space Wolves and the Imperial Guard entered the city. The city was dead. I do not mean without power or destroyed. It was dead. The entirety of the Hive City population lay down, only corpses everywhere that could be seen. Leo recognized what it was. Life support system failure, probably from the moon impact. The power was cut off, and wasn't restored in time. The people had suffocated. Later they found some civilian survivors. They confirmed instead that it was wanted. A gas had been unleashed inside, and had killed everyone. At that point both Leo and Macarius had recognized that Richter had done it, so he could bring back the population of zombies, and use millions of them against the invaders. The travel through the city continued, until Macarius reached the fortress of Richter directly in the center of the city. There, the battle picked up again. Chaos influence was strong to the point that minor demons of Nargol were around, slug-like creatures that seemed to corrupt everything they touched. The zombies started waking up too and charging at the forces of Macarius and the Space Wolves. The Imperial Guard formed a cordon with tank battalions to keep them away, as Macarius, his men and Grimnar stormed the fortress. Inside, the battle became more brutal than ever. Corrupted clone soldiers in their hundreds hid in every corridor and room. Creatures of Nargol stalked everywhere, and these diseases were taking the lives of more and more men if they were even scratched during the battle. More and more died as they advanced. Even space walls started to fall to heavy weapon emplacements, dozens of them in open rooms. Charging like berserkers when they knew they would die, only to bring down more of the bastards with them. Leo and Macarius risked their lives time and time again as they witnessed the horrors inside the fortress. From the visible corruption of Nargol to the cloning vats Richter was using for his soldiers. In the end, the forces of Macarius reached the inner sanctum and found Richter, visibly corrupted by chaos, a madman venerated as a god by the cultists he had around. On his neck, the amulet and symbol of Nargol. The Space Wolves, Macarius and his soldiers charged all at once, Grimnar at the head of all of them, bolters roaring and chainsaws cutting. But even once they had broken through the force field, Richter and his men seemed immortal. Every cut or wound would regenerate in seconds. Even splitting the head of Richter apart like Macarius had done didn't kill him. He merely laughed as it regenerated. At that point, the room was chaos, as the Imperial forces battled the last man and priest of Richter. Macarius himself was engaged in a melee with the arch-traitor, and was on the defensive. It all continued until Leo managed to reach Macarius, now down with Richter over him, trying directly to kill Macarius that was disarmed, his chainsword thrown away from his hand as Richter had broken his wrist. Leo aimed his shotgun to the chest of Richter, and fired. The heretic was blown away, but the wound was regenerating. It was then that Macarius rushed for his chainsword, launched himself over Richter, and in a single movement decapitated him, to then pull away the amulet of Nargol from the chest of his body. Richter and his priests screamed as Richter dissolved into green liquid. His priests, now mortal, were blasted apart by the space walls in a hail of bolter fire. The battle was over. Richter was dead. Macarius had won. The last battle of his career was a triumph that had cancelled his only defeat. At that point, Grimnar reached him. The two exchanged kind words. It was visible that Grimnar respected Macarius greatly. Grimnar then took the amulet of Nargol that Macarius had taken from the body of Richter, swearing that it would be dealt with in due time, and left, leaving with the hope that they would meet again, or so Grimnar said.
And everyone lived happily ever after, right?
Unfortunately, this is 40k. Nobody gets an happily ever after. You will now learn the end of the story of Macarius. And do you want to know why I am so angry about the fact that nobody talks about the finale of this book? Because the end of Macarius' story is such a beautiful scene that I do not feel that it is right just narrating it. The only way to represent it is by recreating the scene, and going through it word for word as it was written. Thing we will do right now. Drake watched Grimnar leave with an expression of relief on his face.
It seems we have survived after all.
He sounded like a man that did not quite believe it. His last bodyguard returned. He seemed to have been exploring the chambers at the back of the cathedral. The bodyguard said that there was something Drake and Macarius should see. He even tried to stop Leo from following Macarius in the chambers, but Leo confirmed that he doesn't take orders from anyone but Macarius. The stormtrooper relented, and Leo was allowed into the room. It was a small antechamber. The corpse of a cultist sprawled on the floor, a heavy auto pistol clutched in his hand. On an altar table were spread a number of grimoires, and sheets covered in strange evil runes. Macarius stood over them, and shook his head uncomprehendingly.
These are unholy rituals. With the amulet and these words, a man could draw on the rune's powers. How long were these in Richter's possession, I wonder?
Why don't you tell me?
What do you mean?
You have been in contact with him all along. That is where your information about the location of his headquarters came from.
I had agents in place.
No, it was not as simple as that. I saw his followers. None of them was sane enough to be your agents. They had lost all semblance of intelligence long ago. Someone informed Richter of my plans. It was the only way he could have kept anticipating my moves. You saw that ranting madman. He was not capable of it.
Crassus.
Crassus could not have known all the details. He was too far away, and interstellar communication is too unreliable.
He had an agent in place, just like I did.
Why?
Why what?
Why betray me? Betray the Crusade, and then come here with me to die? Do you feel so guilty?
A martyr was needed. You were dying. What better way for you to leave the Emperor's service than in one last battle against overwhelming odds, leaving an example of service unto death?
And I spoiled it by winning.
A second passed. It was then that the stormtrooper took the cultist pistol from his corpse, raised it at Macarius' head, and fired. The greatest general of his age, and the second most powerful conqueror after the Emperor of Mankind, died victorious, with a smile still on his face. Drake looked at the bodyguard, and then Leo.
What are you waiting for? We don't need any witnesses. We have a martyr, gunned down by a hidden cultist in his moment of triumph.
The pistol turned towards Leo, that could do nothing but stare at it. He started to raise his shotgun, but the trooper was too fast. He knew he had no chance. A second shot rang from the pistol as Leo closed his eyes. When he opened them up again, Drake was dead, killed in the same way of Macarius. Leo's gaze turned to the trooper again. "What?" was all that he managed to say. The trooper raised his visor. Leo saw the face of Anna. She winked at him, took his shotgun, and pulled the trigger, blasting the corpse of the cultist with it. A moment later, she was gone from the chamber, announcing that an hidden assassin had killed Macarius and Drake, and that Leo had killed them in return. Leo wondered why Anna had killed both Macarius and Drake. Macarius was already dying, that much is obvious. The rejuvenate treatment had stopped working. Even Richter commented that he had a few weeks, a month at best, because of it. Most of all, he wondered why she had left him alive. Maybe as a witness if needed, or maybe she really did care for him. Even he doesn't know. Leo and the rest of the Imperial forces fought their way out of Richter's citadel and brought the corpses of Macarius and Drake with them. They were both burned on funeral pyres. Leo stuck with the lie of both heroes being killed by an hidden cultist, falling in the moment of their triumph. He himself comments that it was a better story for the Imperium of Men than what had truly happened. He himself took all the merit for killing the heretic responsible. Anna and Leo will never meet again, even after the death of Macarius, when the Macarian heresy erupted. As Macarius had left no clear heir to the throne of the Crusade, chaos erupted between his chosen generals, several of them believed to be the clear successor of Macarius. General Sejanus rightfully pointed out that with the death of Lord Solar Macarius, the Crusade had ended. None of them had any right to the position of Lord Solar. Blades were drawn and blood was spilled. The generals had to be forcibly separated by their own soldiers. Wars of uprisings started reaching the territories of the newly formed Macarius and the planets of the Imperium. After Macarius' death, various planets had concluded that the Imperium was too weak to hold them, and seceded. The Administratum soon gave orders that the former generals of Macarius were to act as temporary Imperial commanders over the territories that they had taken for the Imperium. While they were all tactically brilliant, they were not Macarius. The sheer scope of the task overwhelmed them, and they swiftly found they couldn't cohesively hold together the vast territories they had once conquered. Indeed, the majority decided to reign over their own military empires and went to war with one another, with several misinterpreting on purpose the orders they had received from the Administratum to justify their actions. Multiple officers from every battle group decided that having given all to the Imperium, they were entitled to something back, and soon forcefully claimed regions of their own as well. The Imperium was forced to request strike teams of Space Marines to go into the region with orders to suppress the fighting, execute the lead traitors, and restore order. In these conflicts, two chapters we know pretty well will participate. The Star Phantoms and the Minotaurs fought here, with their own brutality and causing tremendous damage even to other Space Marine chapters. Even the Dark Angels fought in the Macarian heresy, for 3 decades in fact. A little trivia on it, this is also where a very beloved Dark Angel character will be born from.
Whom?
A name many people now associate with a meme. Asmodai, that later would become known as the legendary interrogator chaplain Asmodai, actually fought in the Macarian heresy on the High Moon of Sigma in late 405 and 41. He was an unremarkable warrior in Tactical Squad Ishmael of the 8th Company. As it is explained in the 7th edition expansion of Warlords of the Dark Millennium, Asmodai, the moon over the High World of Sigma, that contained various mining facilities, had rebelled against the High World itself and the Imperium of Men, and needed to be brought into compliance. The rebel Lord of the Moon was later discovered to be a fallen Archangel. Asmodai fought against him with his brothers, but was wounded. And the fallen Archangel had already set the moon to explode before Asmodai and his squad entered his chambers. Asmodai was the only survivor of his own squad that managed, even while wounded and limping, to escape alive from the moon before it exploded. A primordial hatred had awoken inside of him from the battle, and when the Dark Angels wanted to promote him, he refused the positions in the Raven Wing and Death Wing, to be instead elevated as a chaplain. And that is the origin story of Interrogator Chaplain Asmodai. Eventually, 100 chapters had their brothers engaged in the Macarian heresy. And after decades of ongoing conflicts across the region, the High Lords sent the newly elevated War Master Solon to restore order at any cost. It took almost 70 years before the Macarian heresy was deemed concluded and the territories of Macarius' conquest officially pacified. General Sejanus was made sector governor of the newly formed Macarian sector, his loyalty to Macarius and the Imperium unquestionable. He rebuilt the Macarian sector and governed over it well. He lived a long life, even if not always an happy one, losing many of his children to the wars of the Imperium. He named even a subsector after a daughter he had lost, a colonel of the Imperial Guard that had fought and died in the Macarian heresy. That territory is to this day named the Tzeentch subsector. After his death, Sejanus will be canonized as a saint himself, like Macarius was. An honor he had resisted in life was bestowed upon him on his death. Also, General Crassus will become a saint of the Imperium, despite his attempted betrayal of Macarius, but the codexes all say he fought in the Macarian heresy to re-establish order. I have nothing to counter that source-wise, so I must believe it. To be honest, not much is known in specifics about the Macarian heresy itself. Only general events that have virtually no depth. The most interesting times of history of 40k are always ignored by Games Workshop. And like this, the Macarian Crusade and the heresy that followed was over. The dream of Macarius became reality, the Great Schism had ended, and he had conquered 1,000 worlds back into Imperial territory. This is the true legend of Lord Solar Macarius, the greatest general that ever lived in 40k, and that died undefeated, with a smile on his face. So Pio, did you enjoy the story? Where the fuck is Pio?
Oh, you followed me. I am not doing anything bad, yet. But I was inspired by the story of Macarius and I was wondering if I could attempt to do the same. You know, conquering places, establishing my rule somewhere. Brazil, mainly, to be specific. Don't judge me, it is my nature. So, be well until the next video, eh? I'll go now, my flight is departing. And if you hear about war crimes, remember, it was not me. Don't believe the rumors. I'm always innocent.
I want to give a big thank you to a Vox in the Void for collaborating with us and lending his voice to Lord Solar Macarius. You can find the link to his YouTube channel in the description.